There are moments in life when what starts as a simple favor turns into something you never expected. I'm Lily, a 31-year-old marketing professional. I'd worked my way up the ladder in my company, and my dedication caught the attention of our department head, Michael. Though our relationship remained professional, there was a trust and respect between us that came from years of working side by side on tight deadlines and big projects. Michael had helped me grow in my role, and for that I was grateful. One Wednesday evening, as we wrapped up a meeting, Michael approached me with a peculiar request. He seemed slightly hesitant, a rare sight for a man so confident. "Lily, I don't usually mix personal and work life," he started, scratching his chin. "But I have a friend visiting town, a very close friend, and he's new to the area. He could use a bit of guidance, and honestly, I'm swamped with work." I raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "You want me to show him around?" Michael nodded, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "Just a friendly favor. His name's Josh. We've been friends since college, and he's the kind of person who appreciates getting to know the locals. I figured if anyone could help him feel at home, it'd be you." Though slightly hesitant, I agreed. Michael had always been supportive of me, and I figured this would be an easy enough task to repay his kindness. Later that evening, Michael texted me Josh's contact info. Josh and I exchanged a few messages, and he seemed charming and friendly. We planned to meet at a cafe near my place the next day, just to say hello and get acquainted. The next day, I arrived at the cafe early, ordering a coffee and settling into a quiet corner by the window. A few minutes later, the door opened and a man entered who immediately caught my attention. Josh was tall, with an athletic build, sandy brown hair, and a confident air. His smile was disarming, and he had a natural ease about him that made him instantly likable. "Lily?" he asked, flashing me a warm smile. "That's me," I replied, smiling back as I stood to shake his hand. Our initial meeting was surprisingly pleasant. Josh was full of questions, genuinely interested in the best places to visit, eat, and explore. We shared stories over coffee, please, and he had a way of making everything sound more exciting than it was. By the end of our conversation, I found myself looking forward to showing him around, eager to share my favorite spots with someone so appreciative. Over the next week, I took Josh to some of my favorite places around the city. We visited bustling markets, strolled through quiet parks, and enjoyed local food spots that were hidden gems. Each time we met, our conversations grew a little deeper, and I began to see why he and Michael were such close friends. Josh was intelligent, witty, and incredibly kind, and he had a way of making me feel understood, even during brief exchanges. One evening, after a long day at work, Josh suggested we grab a drink. He knew a place near his hotel, a cozy, dimly lit bar with jazz music playing softly in the background. We found a quiet booth in the back, and as the night wore on, I realized how easy it was to talk to him. There was an ease between us that felt almost too natural, as if we had known each other for far longer than a week. As we chatted, I felt his gaze linger a little longer than before, and there was a warmth in his smile that hadn't been there initially. I told myself it was just the wine loosening our nerves, but deep down, I felt an unmistakable shift in our dynamic. It was both thrilling and nerve-wracking. "I have to say," Josh said, leaning in slightly, "you've made my time here more enjoyable than I could have imagined. This city is amazing, but I think it's the company that's made it special." I felt a flutter in my chest, surprised by the compliment and the intensity of his gaze. "I'm glad you feel that way," I replied, trying to keep my tone light, even though my pulse quickened. "It's been nice having someone to explore with." Josh looked down for a moment, as if weighing his words. "You know, Michael is lucky to have you as a friend and colleague." The mention of Michael brought me back to reality. A wave of guilt washed over me as I remembered why I was here in the first place. To be a kind guide for Michael's friend, not to let my emotions wander. But just as I was about to say something to ease the moment, Josh reached out and placed his hand on mine, a gentle yet deliberate touch. "I'm sorry," he murmured, pulling his hand back slightly. "I don't want to make you uncomfortable. I feel like I've known you forever." His words left me speechless. In that moment, it felt as if time had slowed and the world outside the dim bar faded away. I knew this was dangerous territory, that I was skirting a line I should never cross, but a part of me didn't want to pull away. Josh, I began, my voice barely above a whisper. This isn't right. He nodded, a small, almost regretful smile tugging at his lips. I know, but that doesn't make it any easier. He leaned back, breaking the moment between us, and I exhaled, not realizing I'd been holding my breath. The bar around us felt suddenly too close, the air heavy with tension. We fell into silence, each of us processing the unspoken emotions that hung between us like a secret we were both hesitant to admit. We should probably call it a night, I finally managed, my voice steady though my heart was racing. Yeah, he replied, glancing down. It's probably for the best. We left the bar and walked side by side through the quiet streets, neither of us saying much. As we approached his hotel, he stopped and turned to face me, his eyes intense in the soft glow of the street lamp. I know this sounds crazy, but I don't want this week to end, he said quietly. I haven't felt this connected to someone in a long time. Hearing those words, my heart ached. Part of me wanted to brush it off, to remind him and myself that we were just two people from different worlds, brought together by coincidence. But another part of me, the part that felt an undeniable connection to him, wanted to let down every guard and tell him that I felt the same. Instead, I took a deep breath. Josh, you'll be leaving soon, and I don't know where that would leave us. He nodded, understanding. I don't have an answer for that either, but maybe sometimes things just happen and we can't explain them. There was a vulnerability in his eyes that I hadn't seen before, a quiet longing that mirrored my own. I didn't know what to say, so I nodded, feeling the weight of our connection settle around us like a fragile thing we didn't dare touch. Before I could change my mind, I took a step back. Good night, Josh. Good night, he replied, his voice barely a whisper. The next few days passed in a whirlwind. I focused on work, throwing myself into my projects to avoid thinking about Josh and the night outside his hotel. We exchanged a few texts, keeping things light and casual, but I could sense the same hesitation in his words that I felt. On his last day in town, he asked if I'd join him for coffee. I almost said no, thinking it would be easier to let him leave without another goodbye, but part of me needed, that one last moment with him. When I arrived at the cafe, he was already there, his gaze warm yet tinged with sadness. We ordered our drinks and made small talk, but both of us dancing around the goodbye that loomed over us. I'm going to miss this city, he finally said, his eyes meeting mine, and I'm going to miss you. I felt a pang in my chest, struggling to keep my emotions in check. I'll miss you too, Josh, more than I can say. He reached across the table, his hand finding mine, and for a moment it was as if we were the only two people in the world. We sat there in silence, our hands clasped together, neither of us wanting to let go. Finally, he sighed, a resigned smile on his face. I guess this is it, then. Yeah, I replied, my voice barely audible. Goodbye, Josh. He gave my hand a final squeeze before releasing it, and I watched as he walked out of the cafe, disappearing into the crowd. The weeks that followed were a strange mix of nostalgia and longing. I kept myself busy, trying to move on from the brief but intense connection I'd shared with Josh. Yet, I couldn't help but replay our moments together in my mind, wondering what could have been if things were different. Then, one day, I received a message from him. It was short, just a simple, I'm in town, any chance you're free to meet? My heart raced as I read it, the familiar excitement bubbling up inside me. It had been months since we'd last seen each other, and a part of me had tried to convince myself that our connection had been nothing more than a fleeting spark. But as I typed my response, agreeing to meet him, I knew that spark had never truly faded. There was a thrill in knowing that our story wasn't over just yet, that maybe, just maybe, fate had brought us together for a reason. As I headed to the place we agreed to meet, I felt a mix of anticipation and trepidation. I didn't know what the future held for us or if we could overcome the obstacles in our way, but in that moment, all I cared about was seeing him again and the possibility that we might be able to pick up where we left off. I nodded, trying to keep my breathing steady as he closed the distance between us. Without another word, he reached for my hand, pulling me close, his other hand tracing a gentle line down my arm. The moment felt surreal, everything we'd been holding back bubbling to the surface in a rush of unspoken words and shared glances. I felt my heart race as his fingers intertwined with mine, his breath warm against my cheek. All the unresolved tension between us hung thick in the air, pressing in on us until there was no space left for uncertainty. He looked into my eyes, his gaze intense, questioning, as if he were giving me one last chance to walk away. But I didn't want to. I was done with restraint, done with pretending. And in that moment, every reason why this was impossible faded away, leaving only the feeling we'd been denying since the very beginning. My hands found their way to his shoulders, and I pulled him toward me, feeling the weight of every word we hadn't spoken. He leaned in, his lips brushing mine in a kiss that was slow, intentional, as if savoring every second of the connection we'd tried so hard to resist. It was gentle at first, almost hesitant, but the longing between us grew quickly, until there was no holding back. Time seemed to stop as we stood there, wrapped up in each other, a moment we both knew would linger in our memories long after it was over. When we finally broke apart, breathless and flushed, he rested his forehead against mine, his hands still holding me close. "What now?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. I smiled, not knowing the answer myself, but knowing I wasn't ready to let go just yet. "Maybe we don't have to know," I replied softly, brushing a strand of hair away from his face. "Maybe we just see where this goes." He nodded, a smile breaking across his face, and in that shared look, I felt the thrill of something new and thrilling blossoming between us, a promise that whatever happened next, it was a story neither of us would forget.